I won't follow you, don't worry. Well, it's an absolutely fantastic day to be out on the bike, particularly the Goldwing B. Honda don't like to call it a bagger. I guess that's what the B stood for. Honda are not that keen, but at home it's been referred to as the bat bike. Anyway, just looking at this on this very comprehensive dashboard, probably one of the nicest dashes I've seen on a motorcycle. The range is showing me 83 miles, so that means we better go and get some fuel. Love this starter as well, just one click, we're away. And I'm also falling in love with the DCT gearbox, more on that later on, but having ridden this and the Africa Twin, I love it. I could definitely see it being part of my life. So into drive, and let's go and get some fuel. I've got the screen in its lowest position today because it's nice and warm, gets a nice bit of airflow through it. When you put it up there, it's brilliant. You don't get any wind or buffeting or anything at all. Best screen I've ever tried. But there's also this little button here which lifts this vent up, and that just helps the air that comes up underneath the front of the screen to be directed to the rider as opposed to over the top of your head. So I've been riding the Goldwing for a few days now. I've been slightly hampered by an ankle injury which has made it almost impossible to get a boot on. Got Piccadilly Circus around here, but I'm now able to ride, and first impressions are I've been incredibly impressed. It's a bike I never thought I would like, and I find myself being in a position of saying I am a Goldwing fan. Into neutral. Now the first problem I had to overcome with this was actually finding the fuel filler cap. This panel here, if I push that button, there's a button in there, and there we go. Let's put some nice fuel in today. We'll treat the old girl. This is the first time I've ridden a Goldwing, and obviously the Goldwings have got a really great following, and this is very far removed from the early Goldwings, but it's still got the same DNA. You know, it is a big bike. I'll put the weights and measures on the screen, but I think it's about, I don't know, 790 pounds in weight or something like that. Huge, great big 1800cc flat 6 motor, which is just luxurious, really peachy motor. I've noticed this is almost silent when you're whispering around town at 30 miles an hour. It's just over 1,000 revs, and it just tickles along really nicely. But yeah, great motor. Despite the Goldwing's weight and bulk, it's actually a very easy, relaxed bike to ride. That big engine sits right at the bottom, and therefore the centre of gravity is incredibly low, and obviously the seat height is low as well, so you can easily put your feet down. Manoeuvring the bike isn't really too much of a problem. If you're off the bike pushing it, it can be a bit of a handful, but as you are probably aware, this bike has a reverse. I've got a little button down here. If I click that and hold the brake on, I can then use the plus and minus of the shifters to go backwards and forwards. But it surprised me. The big girl that she is still very manoeuvrable. Okay, it is a longer wheelbase, so you have to think about those corners a little bit more and changing direction quickly mid-turn, which is never a good thing to do anyway, but you know, if you have to do it, it takes a little bit more effort. But so far, even in the usual country lanes that I ride, maybe not some of the smallest ones, but in these sort of country lanes, you can see it's incredibly nimble, very easy to control. You can get quite a lean on it. So far I've not heard any scraping. Honda will be pleased to hear that. I think the exhaust will come back intact. I think really to scrape those exhausts, you really got to be trying or wanting to do it. In normal riding, the amount of lean that I've got is more than enough for what I would need to get round the bends, and I've had no contact with the ground whatsoever, so that's all good. Obviously this is a pretty comprehensive cockpit. in front of you. Yeah, it's a bit like the Africa Twin review. When you first look at this, it's just a whole host of buttons, and obviously there's more on this bike. We've got more buttons on this side, and we've got all of this on here. Largely what's going on here is a replica of what's going on the hand control. So you've got two options, a bit like the BMW iDrive. You've got this twisty wheel, and you can flick that up and down and turn it around. But so far they all seem to be good, pretty intuitive. Obviously one thing you've noticed is the speakers. Yeah, it could be a little bit obnoxious, but I wouldn't necessarily use them riding through the middle of the town. But if you're cruising along with your open face helmet on and you want some tunes, the ability to plug your phone into this handy little compartment here. See, there's like a little foam holder and a USB case, so that will charge your phone, but it also connects it up to the system. So if I flick through the source buttons and get to the iPod, then we can have music whilst we're going along. I can see how that would appeal to some people. Riding position is fantastic. This seat is like an armchair. Nice bars, a decent width. You've got a decent bend in your arm, nice 90-degree bend in the leg. Really relaxing to ride. One thing you notice bouncing around at the front here is the cantilever front suspension. I think that's the right terminology. You can be quite mesmerised watching this go up and down, but it gives this front end a really sure-footed feel. Now obviously this is a solid bike, it doesn't feel anything but planted, but you do still get a decent amount of feedback from that front wheel so that you can tell what's going on. Mirrors, well, they're just like a car mirror. They sit out nice and wide and give you a really good view behind you. Somebody did ask me about filtering, and actually filtering is not too bad, because the same with anything, those mirrors are the widest part. And I'll check the measurements, but I don't think this is any wider than something like an Africa Twin or a Super Tenere. If it is, it's not much, but you pretty much know that once you get those wing mirrors through, you're okay. The panniers built into the back don't stick out any further. You obviously just have to be aware of them. The dashboard I think is fantastic. We've got all the information you could ever need. It's really well laid out. Big screen in the middle, so if you're using the nav, it doesn't take up any other assets on the dashboard. You've got that right there. You've got your speedometer, rev counter. It will show you your gear, what mode you're in, temperature over here. Then we've got the air temperature, trip and the range, and you can alter those through the settings to set that up exactly how you want. But incredibly clear, really nicely finished. Now maybe I'm just getting old, or maybe this has unlocked a hidden desire within me, but I have to say I've kind of fallen in love with this bike. It's just so relaxing to ride. It's a real treat. If you want to munch miles, this is the machine to do this on. But even if you just want to go and cruise around on a Sunday morning, there's not many bikes I've ridden that are more comfortable than this. And actually, from the outside, I think it looks really good as well. Now, the touring version, which has got the big seat on the back, obviously gives you more storage room. There's almost like a car boot behind that, and is obviously much nicer for pillion passengers. The B, or the bagger, or the bat bike, whatever you want to call it, I think is a much nicer looking bike. Pillion passengers still get a really big seat. There is an option, if you want, on this you can put a backrest on, and obviously to have the built-in pennies is useful, although to be fair they're not quite as roomy as I thought they would be. They're a decent size, but they can be a bit of a funny shape, so to get stuff in there, it's better to pack, I've found, lots of smaller items as opposed to trying to get one big bag in there. But you can still get a hell of a lot of stuff in there if you need to. Wind protection, again, really good. I've got the screen at its lowest, we've mentioned that, with the deflector. If you put it up to its highest point, I'm now in a little bubble. I can feel the wind in my arms. I've got nothing around my head. So extended motorway rides with this screen up here, again incredibly relaxing. I haven't ridden this in an open face helmet yet, but I did ride it in the Bi-City Roadster helmet, which I reviewed a little while ago, and with this screen up and the visor up on my helmet, I could comfortably ride at 80 miles an hour with no buffeting, no wind in my eyes, nothing at all. So it does a really good job. But the fact that it's 33 degrees today, I'm going to shove that down there and get as much airflow as I can. It's just such a luxurious place to be. You've got your music, you've got your nav, you've got cruise control. Again, cruise control very easy. It's just a case of hit the cruise control button, orange light comes on. I want to set it at 30 miles an hour. I'll press the set button. There we go, cruise control, 30 miles an hour. And to release that, press the button again and we're off. In one of my recent reviews, I talked about the pigeonholing of bikes that happens. A lot of people want to sort of shove something into a hole and say that's exactly what that's for. It was the 790 Adventure R actually, and everybody says, well, it's a good adventure bike, but if you're serious about off-road. And that's not wrong, but I also found that it would work as a really good bike for touring and for everyday use. So instead of just pigeonholing this as a big touring bike or a big lazy bike for people who want to go cruising, I think it does a lot more than that. These kinds of runs, it's perfect. And actually, I'm dawdling along in tour. Let's show you. I'll put it into sport mode and you can see how this easily picks up. It is quite a motor. So much more of a snappier throttle response in sports mode, and this bike really does heam along. It holds onto the gears much longer, changes down much quicker. That DC gearbox is an absolute dream. Again, I never thought I would be interested in that. In fact, I remember telling myself or saying to somebody in the past, if I bought, for example, the Africa Twin, I'd buy the manual box. I wouldn't go near the DCT. That's just been flipped on its head now, and if I did buy the Africa Twin, I would definitely go for the DCT version. But yeah, for the big old bird that she is manoeuvrable. If you flick through the mode button, that flicks through the various modes, so tour, sport, economy, rain, and then once you've chosen the one that you want, close the throttle and instantaneously we're in that tour mode. You can of course obviously click this into manual mode, and then you've got the up down shifters on the left hand side if you're really into that. I'm not particularly, so I'll put it back into drive. One of the other things that is big about this motorcycle is the price, but you do get a hell of a lot of motorcycle for your money. Having said that, with some of the finance deals that are around at the moment, and Honda have got some cracking PCP deals on, you can get yourself onto one of these quite cheaply.
The on-the-road price for this model is $23,999. If you assume a 5825 deposit and take into account Honda's test ride initiative, you can get this bike for £199 per month over a 36-month term. At the end of that term, you've still got that balance of payment, but you can either pay that and keep the bike, hand the bike back, or just roll it into a new deal. So PCP deals can be a way to make bikes like these more affordable.
That temperature's not dropping, so I think I'm going to go and find myself an ice cream, or at least a cold drink.
When I saw it come in, I just went, oh, I love that. When I was much younger, I wanted a motorbike, and women didn't drive motorbikes.
Oh right, okay. It's getting much better now.
Well, I know it annoys me like anything.
But I tell you what, this bike on these roads on a day like this, really hard to beat.
I hope you enjoyed the video. It was intended just to be an initial ride review, but ended up being a bit more than that. If you've got any comments or questions, you know where to leave those. And until next time, all that leaves me to say is thanks for watching, take care, ride safe, and I'll see you soon. Bye.